Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Lawcast. This week, we're talking about ECW One Night Stand 2006. Cush, what are your memories of the time WWE went crazy and decided to bring back ECW?
Even sitting here in 2017, it's hard to believe that this actually happened. I vividly remember, it was like a fever that everyone got caught up in when they released that DVD, and everyone was so pumped about ECW, and One Night Stand was so great. And here was coming the other one, and the news sites start picking up on they're going to do ECW a show, like it's coming back. It's like nobody knew what to expect. WWE had never really done anything like this before.
This is sort of what they talked about doing with WCW, but that would have only been a couple months after WCW had folded. They would have relaunched it. This was 5 years after ECW had gone out of business.
Right. And Rob Van Dam during this time kind of becomes almost like a folk hero when everybody finds out that he's the reason for the ECW revival. So he's out of nowhere become a star, as hot as he was during the invasion. It's a fascinating point where there were all these reasons lining up to believe that this might actually happen and work.
I remember when I first read about this was maybe the most excited I ever was as a wrestling fan. Even though I wasn't that big of an ECW fan, it was just such a crazy, insane, cool thing. And it had been something we had been speculating about on wrestling message boards for years. Oh, wouldn't it be awesome if they brought back ECW? And then they decided to actually do it.
Train was running so hard. ECW had been gone for long enough that we remembered so fondly all the people in it and completely glossed over all of their flaws. All of a sudden, Balls Mahoney was a pretty damn good worker.
Yeah, it was just long enough that we could be nostalgic for the late 90s and the Attitude Era and ECW. This was the very beginning of that, where we could look back on the good old days fondly.
But soon enough that they were all still young enough to actually work.
Well, sort of. Some of
them, yeah.
It was April 2006, right around or right after WrestleMania, that the news leaked. It may have been right before, because I remember going into WrestleMania, everybody's assumption was that Van Dam was going to win the Money in the Bank and cash it in on the ECW show. But yeah, right around WrestleMania, the news leaked. They tried hard to get the entire band back together. They got Paul Heyman back. They put him in charge of creative. I think he had been working in OVW, which was, kind of their way of trying to get him to quit, to send him to Louisville. They put Heyman, Dreamer, and Ed Koskey in charge of creative. They called literally everybody. They tried to get Raven. They tried to get the Dudleys. They tried to get Shane Douglas, even guys you thought were, blackballed from working for WWE anymore. They tried to bring back, but a lot of those guys were under contract with TNA or otherwise just weren't really interested in making a full-time comeback. So they kind of settled on, they got Sabu and they got Sandman. They already had Dreamer. They got Balls Mahoney, Just Incredible, Super Crazy. And after that, kind of just a bunch of kind of undercard guys from the old ECW. C.W. Anderson, Roadkill, the FBI. Pretty decent roster, but not blowing me away. Not certainly paled in comparison to the roster that they had for the first One Night Stand show.
Right. And I don't think they needed to get all of those guys to make it a credible show, but it does feel a little bit empty. If they could have just gotten a couple of different ones that weren't in that, if they get Rhino and Jerry Lynn, it's a Raven. That's enough, right? That just fills it out, and there's main event level ECW performers.
Yeah, it doesn't drop from Sabu and Sandman and Dreamer down to that next level of guys.
Exactly. And I mean, that's because TNA was basically doing this exact same thing over there.
Yeah. No, didn't that come later? I thought they did that in 2009.
I mean, it officially, the show that they did came later, but unofficially, they were basically just signing up all the ECW guys, praying that the fans would actually care.
Yeah, didn't work out. So the initial reporting was that they would get like a real late night TV slot, like 11 o'clock on Saturday night, which was kind of what I envisioned anyway, because that would allow them to kind of be make it a more mature product and make it kind of unimportant enough that maybe Vince wouldn't care about and would give them some freedom with it. The other thing was maybe they were talking about it taking Velocity's place as a webcast. And I never watched Velocity online in this era, but I can only imagine what a webcast looked like in 2006. That sounds horrible.
It wasn't great. I mean, Velocity actually had like a small kind of like real hardcore fan base that was mostly built around like the one good match in Velocity history, which was Akio versus Paul London. And that one too.
Benoit and Regal had a great series. Like for a while, it seemed like they were wrestling on Velocity every week.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Superstars debuted and there was suddenly like a great match in the main event every single week. And so some people only watch Superstars. It was kind of like that.
Yeah. But they ended up actually getting a TV deal, the Sci-Fi Network, which wasn't a great one, but it was just kind of found money because I don't think they were expecting to get this on TV. I don't think they were expecting to get a new TV spot for it. I think they were thinking maybe it would take like the spot of the Raw replay that was running at 2:00 in the morning, but instead a pretty good TV deal, Tuesdays at 10 p.m. on the Sci-Fi Network. So the idea was that it would be live after SmackDown had just been taped, which sort of struck me as like kind of strike one at the time, that doing a live show after you've just taped SmackDown is a bad idea. See 205 Live.
Yeah, it's amazing they didn't learn their lesson from this, because obviously it's not something that can work. It's just the fans are already burnt out. They came to watch a totally different show in a totally different style. And now you're just expecting them to be into this. Like, it's just not something that can sustain itself. And yet they just...
Yeah. And like, you're going to do ECW at like, in like Cleveland, Ohio and Chattanooga, Tennessee, and just like random towns where there was no ECW fan base. Like, if you were going to make this work, you probably needed to shoot it like at the Hammerstein Ballroom or the Manhattan Center or somewhere in the Northeast every single week. But that would cost way too much money.
Yeah, I completely agree. But
so they should have just not done this. They should have just been like, fun idea, but we can't pull it off.
I guess that's the thing. Like, they really, structure-wise, they do everything possible to try to pull this off. And it's kind of a victim of its own success, you know? Like, there's such runaway momentum for this that they have to try it. Crazy that they're just like, well, hell, let's get it on TV. Well, hell, let's take it on the road. Like, it's a mistake, 100%.
And they launch it. I mean, they decide we're going to bring this back in April, and they do the pay-per-view and the TV show in June. Like, they put it together in 2 months.
They definitely, this is something that should have waited and had more time, but
yeah, like if after the first, like if the night of like the first One Night Stand pay-per-view, they'd be like, we should bring this back. Let's spend the next year putting this together, and launched it after this show, then it still probably wouldn't have worked, but at least they would have had more time to put it together.
Yeah, but that's just not WWE style, man. Nope. The XFL, the network, all of it came to be in like 3 months.
Yeah, Vince wanted his new ECW brand, and he wanted it right now. So I think there's a narrative around this, and it's probably like from some random ECW guys' shoot interviews and stuff, that like Vince brought this back intending it to fail so people wouldn't chant ECW anymore. And like, that's a really dumb theory. And I think what disproves that more than anything else is like, they put top tier talent on ECW. When ECW gets their 2 draft picks from Raw and SmackDown, the 2 guys they get are Rob Van Dam and Kurt Angle, who are both totally legit main event stars. Kurt Angle had just lost the World Heavyweight title on SmackDown and was one of the 5 biggest stars in the company, and Van Dam was on fire and like a legit main event guy at that point.
Absolutely. Can Vince McMahon get a little goddamn credit at this point?
No, never.
But I mean, like, not only does he bring this thing back, not only does he actually listen to the fans and look at the sales and say, all right, this is what they want, let's do it. He takes his own hands off of this. This is the first time that he takes his hands completely off of his own product. right? He
Not for
gives
very
it
long, but yeah.
he gives it a chance. He literally is just like, this is Paul Heyman's. I'm going to give you my stars. I'm going to give you TV time. I'm going to give you all the resources. This is for you guys to do. Go for it. Unprecedented. It only Triple H with NXT now has had that kind of freedom, and Paul Heyman is not as trustworthy as Triple H.
No, not exactly. So then on top of that, they also got the Big Show. He jumped it was a special on like a Wednesday night, I think. It was like WWE versus ECW, and it was actually a really good show. But yeah, Big Show defected to ECW. So they've got Big Show, Van Dam, and Angle on top of the ECW guys. And like, that's a pretty legitimate roster to me.
Now, it is important to remember that at that point, Big Show was about as worthless as he'd been since he was kind of so fat they sent him down to OVW. He just didn't have a lot of direction, but I mean, he was the Big Show. He's always got potential to become something.
He's one of those guys there's always the possibility you can flip the switch and just get him hot, which they managed to do here as this brand went along.
Oh my God, like this revives the Big Show. This is
probably the best run of his career.
Absolutely. Like somehow being in ECW, like let him tap into meanness, which is something that he never really did. Like, but he became such like an aggressive fucking shithole that it was amazing.
Yeah. The Big Show is the ECW champion, defending against like everybody from Raw and SmackDown was the best thing about this show.
And it actually made people believe in the Big Show. Like he became like part of the ECW fabric for a minute.
Yeah. No, he was accepted almost immediately. It's actually interesting. He gets a really big pop when he comes out.
It's just one of those things, like, I don't think it's possible to know in advance. Like, they were just kind of, like, flying by the seat of their pants, like, I wonder who Smarks will like. I wonder who Smarks will like. Will they like this guy? The only one they were sure about was Kurt, which, I mean, that's a layup. He had some history with ECW. He's 100% credible. They knew that was going to work. Roll of the dice, but, man, it works.
Yeah. So, like we said before, the main event is Rob Van Dam cashing in Money in the Bank against John Cena for the WWE Championship. I'd say my expectation was they would do some kind of disputed finish where, like, Van Dam pinned him, but then they would announce that, like, on Raw, they'd be like, no, Cena's still the WWE Champion, but Van Dam is the ECW Champion, was sort of the way I expected them to come out of this.
Oh, yeah, I thought this was going to be a dusty finish all the way. I mean, it's important to remember that while Van Dam was hot during this period, and a lot of people were super hot on him, the last pay-per-view match he had before this was against Shelton Benjamin.
And he lost, didn't he?
Yeah, because it was for the IC title and the Money in the Bank.
Actually, no, I think he might have. I think he did win the belt, but then he lost it back the night after that or something. But yeah, it was. Yeah, they were not exactly pushing him to the moon at this point.
Yeah, so he was not on Cena's level here. It's only being in this environment that would make you believe that he was, which is why they do wind up protecting Cena a little bit at the end, but Cena does the job, man.
Yeah, and it was a revelation because it was the first time they put Cena in a situation where they knew he was going to be booed and they were cool with it and they just rolled with it, and that would kind of subsequently become the rest of John Cena's career.
Yeah. And while we'll get more into that match because it's really fascinating in that way, I do want to point out that like the level that the WWE guys go to put over the ECW guys is incredible. Do this with the WCW guys by any means.
No, and if they had, the invasion may have gone better.
Exactly. Like they're selling their asses off for ECW.
ECW kicks the shit out of WWE on this show.
Yeah, and that's just sort of the way it was going, too. Like, that episode of Raw that you talked about is one of my favorite of all time. They make you feel like Sabu is an equal to John Cena. Like, they have a battle royal where they put in all the biggest WWE stars and then just a bunch of ECW nobodies, and they treat them like equals. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say they didn't try, at least initially.
Right.
It all fell apart really fast, but they really did put all their effort into this. Like, it was not a good idea, I would say. That's with hindsight, but I think also at the time, if we had been thinking more clearly rather than with nostalgia, we would have said you shouldn't be watering down your brand. You've already got 2 shows and not enough stars for those 2 shows. Like, creating a third and diverting even more guys is a bad idea, but they really went for this. I don't really know what they thought their end game was here, other than just, we can have a third show, more TV rights, more house shows, more pay-per-views. But yeah, none of that really worked out.
Yeah. I think now from the future, we can tell that Vince always wanted a third brand. Like, he just, for some reason, was in love with the idea that they could do a third one, have somebody touring literally every day of the week forever.
Yeah, it's just more content is more money. Like, this has been WWE's business model for a long time now.
Yeah. Had the idea for WWE Network come out before the idea for ECW, that would have been the ideal platform for it. It just never worked out that way.
Yeah, like in a lot of ways, ECW ended up being the forerunner to NXT, just not as good as NXT ended up being. But
right.
We'll kind of get into that part of it later. So, getting into the show, crowd was going absolutely crazy when the show kicked off. Like, and I loved that there was no opening package; they just cut straight into the arena.
Absolutely, and just the signs and stuff, like, it's become so legendary. This crowd on this night, one of those things that resonates with people. And the "if Cena wins, we riot" sign.
How often do you hear that phrase? Like, all the time.
Like, whoever came up with the idea for that sign has become like a benchmark in wrestling history. Yeah. And like, that's literally like the biggest, most famous sign of all time, right?
I mean, it's sort of like that's the beginning of like the modern dynamic of wrestling, where the only thing that gets heat is when the promotion doesn't have the guy you like win.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, like, I think you can sort of trace that feeling back to here. At least this is when it was crystallized.
Yeah, and that's the important thing to remember. Like, all subsequent "if blank doesn't win, we riot," it rings false. Like, no, you're not. Shut up.
But here, there probably actually would have been a riot, or at least like a bunch of trash thrown at the ring.
If Cena had squashed Van Dam, I'm not sure he makes it out without a fist fight.
Yeah, like, I think there would have been, like, legitimate concern for his safety. There's a reason someone else on this show does their promo from the balcony instead of in the ring, but we'll get into that later.
Absolutely.
So Heyman comes out and he does a promo, and he just kind of fires up the crowd. This is your moment. You did this. Just great. I always love these Heyman promos. It's also, I feel like, sort of a lost art, the idea that the promoter would be a booster of the promotion. Like, you never have, you do, Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon do this a little bit on SmackDown, where they're like, this is SmackDown, this is the A show, but this is kind of old school, where it's like, Heyman is just like, ECW is real wrestling, you guys are the real fans, and I miss this kind of dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, he's telling them exactly what they want to hear, and they're eating it up left and right. I mean, this isn't just something that worked because ECW was hot in the moment. I mean, this always worked. Paul Heyman just had a way of making you feel like you were 10 feet tall, including the fans. Like, he tells them that they're the ones who brought it back, and he's right. Like, there was a lot of ownership that people took over this. Like, hey, we made this happen. Like, our sales...
They spent the money. They bought the DVDs. They bought the pay-per-view. Like, yeah, they are the ones who made it happen.
It was kind of an awakening for Smark fans, like, of the consumer power that they wielded. Like, this was the moment where it's like, hey, we did something.
Yeah, you can vote with your dollar. So the opening match was Taz versus Jerry Lawler. I remember in the lead up to this, there was kind of hope and speculation that this would be an actual match, and that, like, somehow Taz would come out like 100 pounds lighter and in his singlet and actually be able to, like, suplex Jerry Lawler. But that was definitely wishful thinking, because Taz looked like he was about 300 pounds here.
Oh my God, yeah. Taz looked horrible, honestly.
He's in his baseball jersey and his sweatpants, but he's still, like, doing the Taz walk. It's like a parody of Taz.
Yeah, and so, like, it was a weird thing to kind of put on first, because it's just like, ECW was amazing, you made it happen. Here's fat WWE Taz.
Yeah, here's that guy you remember being awesome. Now he's like a lame 300-pound announcer.
Joey Styles actually looks a lot better than Taz does.
Dude, Joey Styles is probably legitimately tougher than Taz.
You're
Taz never
probably
knocked
right.
out JBL.
That is a good point. That is a good point.
So Lawler comes out. He's in heel mode. I've mentioned before, I love heel Jerry Lawler. He slaps Joey Styles at the announce desk, which gets a ton of heat. And when Lawler gets in the ring, Styles like kind of jumps on and puts him in a sleeper hold. And, like, Lawler throws him off, but that's enough distraction for Taz to choke him out and get the win in 35 seconds. It was all they could do. So fun little angle here, but I guess it was disappointing in the moment that Taz couldn't do an actual match. But I'm glad he didn't try because it would have been really bad.
It's so funny, too, because this was the major angle that was leading into this show. Like, this is the one that had been building up for months and months on Raw, where, like, Lawler would just, like, shit on Joey Styles.
Yeah, you remember the Joey Styles shoot promo?
Yes.
That was a great moment.
That was one of the first things that really got people so hyped for this show, was Joey Styles is just, like,
it was
throws down
at
the
bomb before the pipe bomb.
Yeah. He cuts a huge shoot promo on everybody and on Jerry Lawler and storms off the set and stops being Raw's announcer. And it's like, this is before we know the show's coming. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And
real thing.
Do you remember on the special they did the Wednesday before, there was a segment where like Lawler and Taz were getting into it and like they were separated and then like Joey Styles just like smacks JR's hat off?
Yeah, see, that was the hotness. I think maybe, obviously, JR couldn't do anything in the ring at this point, and he wouldn't have wanted to. But something like that, I guess you can't do that because they're not going to boo JR. Like, smarks just aren't going to boo JR anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, it was that just one moment. I mean, what made that moment work was I think it was just kind of like something he did in the moment, and JR looked pissed. Maybe he just sold it well.
Right. Like, it felt like Joey Styles so embodied ECW. Like, he always did. Like, he's the voice, and the fans accepted him as that. Joey Styles was over during this period for that promo. Like, people forget because CM Punk obviously cut the bigger pipe bomb promo. But, man, he went in on WWE. Go back and look that up on YouTube. He went in.
Well, and that was another case of, I'm sure he really thought the things he was saying because he had gotten screwed out of his job. It's, the classic case of WWE hires an announcer because they want a different voice. And then as soon as they get there, they try to make them sound like all of their other announcers.
Yeah. But so, yeah, this had a lot of heat coming into it. It really did.
Yeah.
Luckily, they managed to maintain it despite the fact that Taz probably couldn't have even done a single suplex.
The thing that's amazing is after this, when Taz gets back to the announce table to do commentary, he is completely blown up. And all he did was walk to the ring and put Lawler in a chokehold. And yet he can barely talk.
I did love Taz and Joey Styles as an announce crew together. Like, they have great chemistry on this show. And it's just like kind of an easy, friendly chemistry, and they go through it, and it's good. I like it.
They were unquestionably the best ECW commentary team.
Absolutely.
Better than Adam Lee and Taz and Grisham and Stryker, I think.
Yeah, Grisham and Stryker.
It was Grisham. Yeah, I always get Grisham and Matthews confused.
Oh, boy.
Grisham. All right. Second match, Randy Orton versus Kurt Angle. I love this match.
Phenomenal.
This might be the best match of Randy Orton's career, which seems weird to say because I think of Randy Orton as a really awesome worker, but when I start trying to think of what his best matches are, like nothing really jumps out at me.
Oh, yeah. He's a guy who's had in his career 100 really good matches and not really many great matches. But this is definitely up there.
Yeah. There's just so much heat on him when he comes out because he's just like the epitome of what smart fans hated about WWE in this era. Just like the guy who looks like he comes off an assembly line. He's like the generic creator wrestler in the SmackDown games. 6'4", abs, lightning tattoo. It's just like every guy who came out of developmental looked like this guy.
Yeah. Oh, and he's secretly a douchebag, and everybody online knows it.
Yeah.
And he's just feeding into that. Like, we all remember the reaction that Cena got. Cena wasn't getting assaulted on his way to the ring. People were punching Randy Orton.
Some fat kid punches Orton, and like Orton gives him the thing with Randy Orton is what makes him great is he can just go off at any time, and he was real close to just jacking this kid.
Yeah, he just turns around and he just like stands over him. He's got like 2 feet on this kid, and he's like, "Come on, hit me again." If that kid had hit him again, Orton would have clocked him in the face.
I loved he gets in the ring and he does his pose and he has his pyro, which is just such a great troll of the crowd.
Oh my god, the crowd hates pyro so much.
Especially this pyro where he's like doing his pose and it's the gold sparklers. Like, oh man. And
the chants that he gets in this match too are vicious.
Yeah. Fuck him up angle, fuck him up. Pussy. I think there's a go fuck Cena in there.
Go fuck Cena. You're questionable words.
Yeah. This match is just this is a completely different style. The only thing I can think of with this match is it reminds me of that Joe Angle match from Lockdown.
Yes.
Like it's kind of like a worked shoot fight. Like they're doing really stiff strikes and laying it all in, and Angle's doing all kinds of like takedowns and ground and pound and like different submissions than he would normally do. And, Orton is one of those guys who I feel like kind of rises to the level of whoever he's working with. So when he wrestles somebody awesome like Kurt Angle, like he's just as good and he goes move for move with him here.
Yeah, that's what really surprised me. Because if you would think that Angle would start doing this style, you'd be worried that like Orton's not really the guy to help you with your like catch as catch can shoot wrestling UFC style, but he did. He kept up. He like is working so hard as a heel, and like it's literally like he sat in the back beforehand. It's like, what are a million things Smarks hate in matches? I'ma just do those things. Like some headlocks.
Yeah, no dives. Actually, he does do a dive. He does a crossbody off the top rope.
The most technical dive.
Yeah. And it's an absolutely beautiful crossbody.
Oh my god, it's crossbody.
Just that athletic.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like lots of good stuff here. I always love the counter where Angle goes for the angle slam and Orton kind of slips out of it and gets him with an arm drag. And it's one of those things that they make look effortless that's probably almost impossible to pull off in reality.
That's Randy Orton's whole thing. Like, it's so hard for him to have great matches because he never seems like he's struggling to do anything. He never seems vulnerable. It's so
superplex. It's all just perfect and effortless.
Easy. His entire moveset is shit that should be hard, and it's not.
Yeah. Just a really good match. Ends with Angle tapping out Orton with the ankle lock. Just awesome match here. If you've never seen it, go check it out. Just totally different kind of match. And Angle continued to do this kind of match. He had a couple more of these. He had one with Just Incredible where he like pinned him with a headbutt that was really awesome. But yeah, I mean, this was sort of like the direction his career needed to go to protect his neck. But instead, he refused to go to rehab, got fired, went to TNA, and just continued to wrestle like Kurt Angle and destroy his body for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I wasn't able to enjoy this match fully at the time because there was a black cloud hanging over Kurt Angle during this period where we knew how messed up he was physically and that he was on the painkillers. And
it's a travesty that he was on the road here. Like the fact that they didn't send him home, maybe he refused, but they should not have been booking him here.
Well, there was a school of thought that basically was they were going to take him off the road, and then ECW came along and they needed him. And like, so it just felt wrong to be watching him wrestle and be wrestling really physically.
The thing is,
it was obvious
he was like he's taking the place of Chris Benoit here.
Like, why wasn't this Benoit?
Benoit was just I mean, I guess the term would be personal problems, but like they I don't think Benoit was hurt. They just sent him home for a couple months because he was like, I mean, struggling with both his mental and physical health. And this is a year before his murder-suicide. So this is, I think, when his marriage is getting really bad. He's really starting to lose it. Yeah, but I remember my expectation being that he would come back as part of the ECW, and it never happened. until
Well,
they
I mean,
moved
he
into
kind
ECW at the very end.
I would say he kind of did, but it was at, literally the very end. Like,
Yeah.
he was there to put over CM Punk. Like, how awesome would that have been? But
Yeah. But yeah, it definitely felt like this was Benoit's spot and they were giving it to Angle.
yeah, like I wish there was a world in which we could have seen what he could have done with that, like a healthy, not at all in that mental place, Chris Benoit. Like, the crowd would have been. Like, if this
It would have
happens,
been really cool to see, yeah, Benoit as the Angle tough guy ass kicker doing all his submissions and stuff. This would have been fun.
yeah, and finally a show that's meant for him. Like that he could really be the top star of.
Yeah. After the match, Orton is like, he really plays up the ankle. It's broken. They send like one referee out to help him. He's like, no, get me two more.
They literally like bodily carry him out while they chant "You're a pussy" at him.
This might be the best night of Randy Orton's career.
Oh my god! Like, and I said this before, like when the whole thing about like taking dives came out on the internet recently. Like, what I said was Orton that we always should have had.
Randy Orton is a heel. He's not a baby face.
They spent his whole career desperately trying to make him something other than this. This is what he is.
He's a dick. He just is.
This is why the Legend Killer was so amazing, is you believe that this little shithead really thinks he's better, and he kind of is.
Yeah. Absolutely. If we had gotten this Randy Orton his whole career, he would have had a much better career.
Yeah, this is the top heel Roddy Piper, Randy Orton that could have made money. Yeah. And he just kind of never got there.
You imagine like this guy feuding with CM Punk, feuding with Daniel Bryan. That would have been amazing.
If they had seen what was coming, if they had really seen like the Smark explosion that was coming, this would have been the heel to put up against it. But unfortunately, by then, they had watered it down too much.
So the next match, we've got the FBI, Nunzio and Tony Mamaluke with Big Guido accompanying them versus Tajiri and Super Crazy. And I was surprised by how much I liked this match. This felt like a match very like ahead of its time, a very like indie style, high impact, lots of spots, really stiff match that I enjoyed more than I was expecting it to be. But it's kind of just a total thrown together filler match. There's no program here, and it doesn't really make sense for Tajiri and Super Crazy to be teaming up. Those guys had probably 1,000 matches in ECW.
Yeah, and Tajiri he just re-debuted in this match, right? Like, it was just...
I don't think he was part of... I think this was it for him, too.
Yeah, they sort of talk on the show like he's going to be part of it, but he's under contract with Hustle at this point. Like, he's not...
Yeah, he didn't. I'm sure they called him, but I think he didn't want to come back from Japan. I've heard before that like his wife didn't like America, and that was why he left WWE.
And he was white hot in Japan at that point. It would have been stupid for him to come back. So it's just kind of a nice thing to see him here. I gotta say, I never really liked the FBI. I never really liked Little Guido. But I got to give it up for poor Tony Mamaluke, whose entire career is just like he's like a mattress people do moves to before Little Guido tags in.
I always forget that he exists. I can never remember like who. I was like, oh, was it Vito here? Who was his partner?
Yep, poor Tony Mamaluke. And I remember when I first got into Ring of Honor and he was down there with like a new version of the FBI, and I was like, oh yeah, Tony Mamaluke.
Yeah. So not a lot to say about this match. It's kind of long, but a fun kind of filler match on the card that I think showed maybe a style that ECW could have embraced, which is like the fast-paced, future Ring of Honor style of wrestling.
Yeah. What this match shows, and what a lot of his matches showed during this period, Super Crazy was money, man.
Yeah. Like,
they should have pursued that more.
I'm shocked he didn't end up in the WCW Cruiserweight division. I've never heard a story on why he didn't.
I think the big reason why is that somebody in the backstage genuinely thought there was money in the Mexicools. It was like, I don't know if it was Michael Hayes and one of his racist rants or whatever the hell, but like somebody thought that there was like a main event stable in the Mexicools.
Yeah, Mexican dudes riding lawnmowers to the ring. What a slap in the face to SmackDown's Hispanic fan base.
Oh my God, yeah, like
Just
they
think about
like
that. Like Hispanic fans have are at that point carrying SmackDown, and they bring in these top luchadors and have them ride lawnmowers to the ring and like wear janitors' uniforms.
and as heels. That was the other thing. Like it was supposed to originally be like a more subtle gimmick, where it's just like, oh, this is how you see us white people.
It's like the
fine,
Wild
we'll
Sheet
give you
Steel thing. It's kind of tongue in cheek, but yeah, instead they just became like,
Yeah, they were just lawnmower riding heels who couldn't speak English. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So after the match, Big Show comes out and kills everybody to a huge pop. He's doing like, I love the Cobra Clutch backbreaker into the like, just kind of fling him across the ring slam.
See that it was always looked so nasty, but in a good way. Like that's the Big Show we always should have gotten. Like forget about the choke slam, forget about all this other crap. He's just flinging dudes like they don't even exist. It's beautiful.
And the crowd pops huge for him killing these guys, even though it's a WWE guy showing up to kill the ECW dudes.
Yeah, it doesn't even feel that way. Like even though he'd literally only been in ECW for like a day, like it feels like, oh shit, here comes the biggest new addition to ECW. Like it works so well, and he looks nasty.
Yeah, foreshadowing how good his run would be. Next up, we've got a JBL promo. He just appears on the balcony because if he tried to get to the ring, somebody would have stabbed him.
He had such heat.
Oh,
because of the last one,
hot.
But the last One Night Stand, like he legit, like in the middle of the melee at the end of it, like he knocks Blue Meanie like out just about. Like he cheap shots him,
and beat him up. And they settled with Blue Meanie by letting him beat JBL in a match on SmackDown.
Right, which was like half a match. Like it wasn't anything.
It's just like the most markish thing I've ever heard, that instead of him suing the company and getting money because JBL beat him up, they're like, what if we bring you in a few times and you get to pin JBL? And he's like, okay, that sounds awesome.
Fucking ridiculous. Wrestling is such a ridiculous thing.
Although JBL did get hit with one of the worst chair shots I've ever seen at the end of that match.
Yeah, so
it was Stevie Richards who hit him, but yeah, just massacred.
I guess they got their money's worth. But yeah, he comes out and cuts this promo, and
he's like, I beat the shit out of the Blue Meanie last year. You know what happened? Nothing.
Like, stop bragging about that. Stop. They're going to sue you again.
Crowd chants, you suck dick. He responds, I don't see any women out here, and you're chanting about a male organ. Now who's the fruit booty?
I think I popped harder for the use of fruit booty than I've ever popped for anything in a promo.
What a great phrase. This goes on way too long. This ends up going on for several minutes, and like I kept waiting for the like, oh, Sandman's gonna beat him up, right? Like he's gonna get his comeuppance here. Nope. Just cuts his promo and goes away.
Yeah. Like there are two really interesting things about it. Like I think that the idea here was like they just put on a super nostalgic match, but they really wanted to remind people that this show was about ECW versus WWE. So they really just wanted to like stoke the flames of hatred for WWE, just to be like, hey guys, don't forget, we fucking hate WWE.
Yeah. And his own line, kiss my ass, this show sucks. And he walks away.
The funniest part about it to me is that the entire time he's cutting this hateful anti-ECW promo, Rey Mysterio is standing right behind him.
Wait, he was?
Like, either that or someone exactly Rey's height in a mask.
No, Rey couldn't have been up in the balcony. He's in the next match.
I know, but like, it literally isn't.
Was that like where the locker room was because of the way the arena was set up?
And you would imagine that they would have wrestlers like standing there keeping people from coming out, but like literally if it's not Rey, it's someone his height wearing a Rey mask.
Maybe this is why the crowd shit on Rey so much.
I don't know, but like it's like, why would you put Rey right there? He's the king babyface.
Because they were doing everything they could to make sure he didn't get over as champion.
There's also a security guard that looks exactly like Stone Cold Steve Austin standing right behind him. So I was like, wait a minute, Steve Austin's here?
Yeah, he was at the last one.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, next match for the World Championship, not the World Heavyweight Championship because Rey has it. It's Rey Mysterio versus Sabu. The ECW crowd hates Rey, both the year before this and this year. Any idea why?
I mean, I thought a lot about that while I was watching this match. I think clear line that you can follow when you're seeing like who the ECW fans embraced and who they didn't. Part of it was Rey was never like really part of the fabric of ECW. He came in for like a couple of matches and then he went elsewhere. And he changed so completely, like after he came to WWE and stuff like that. Like any character that became like pandering to like kids.
Yeah, they mostly like seem to hate the 619. Like when he does, when he does like his WWE stuff, they hate it.
But also, while the DVDs will really like put over like we had the best luchadors and stuff like that, like that's not really what the fans thought ECW was about. That's kind of like the prestige stuff that Heyman wanted you to think that it was about. It wasn't really over on the shows that it was on.
Yeah, like the Malenko Guerrero matches were great, but like ECW was really more about the blood and the guts.
Yeah. So I mean, like he's not the kind of star like, and everybody was trading in like on TV in the weeks before, like everybody and their mom who had a cup of coffee in ECW was like, oh boy, I'm an original.
Yeah. So he really does try to get the crowd on his side here. He comes out in tights instead of the pants he wore in WWE. He also has ECW on the back of his mask. This match shouldn't have been booked. Like there's no way out of this one, right?
Yeah. And let's talk for a second about the other really horrible thing that they couldn't pull off this summer, and that's Rey Mysterio's title reign.
Yeah, they fucked him so bad.
Coming off of Eddie's death and all the momentum that Rey had for it, there's some people it's going to rub the wrong way forever that Rey got a push out of this. But he did, and he had an amazing amount of momentum, and the crowd was finally ready for him in the main event, and he wins the title in this big moment. It's great. And then he just proceeds to get murdered by monsters for 6 months.
Literal squash matches against like Henry, Khali, Kane, like every single week. And like JBL is somehow like booking him in these matches and laughing at him afterwards. And like in JBL, we can just hear the voice of Vince McMahon.
Yeah, and they're basically just mocking him. Like he's not treated like a real champion. And that's what you can kind of see here. Champion. He's going on in the middle of an ECW show against Sabu, and he puts over Sabu.
Yeah. Well, like to the extent that he can, because they're not going to put the world title on Sabu.
Right.
And they're not going to have Sabu get beat.
There's no other ECW guy on that world title level.
Yeah.
Van Dam is working. And like maybe they should have put Kurt in the spot.
They just didn't need a World Heavyweight Championship match here. This was a total afterthought. I don't think they announced this until like a week before.
Yeah. Like I honestly don't know what they were thinking. It kind of buries Rey just to have him in it. So then the fact that they protect him at the end, it's like, I mean, what do you do? Like Rey needed to win this match clean, right?
I mean, at this point, I feel like his title run was already fucked.
Yeah.
So. But this match shouldn't have been booked. As for the match, there's not as much sloppiness as I maybe expected, although at one point Sabu goes for the triple jump moonsault and just kind of falls off the top rope. But there's some good action here. I think it was just like the stupid idea of making this match that soured me on it.
Yeah, I love this match. Like I think it might be my favorite match from the night. Probably the main event was better, but I just Sabu when he was on was such a special performer to watch. While this match didn't live up to what it probably was on paper for some people, like, oh my God, Sabu and Rey Mysterio, the two greatest cruiserweights, blah, 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 blah. It was the best of Sabu. Like he wasn't botching. He was really giving it his all. It was fast paced. And Rey must have decided or been told, like, I'm going to make everything Sabu does look amazing. I'm just going to be here to...
Rey gets hurt in like 5 different spots in this match. Like, yeah. Sabu hits the moonsault and his knee lands right on his head. He hits him with like 3 really stiff, unprotected chair shots.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's Sabu being dangerous, but like Ray's there to put over Sabu. Like, that's the only thing that I keep coming back to is why the fuck is the world champion selling so hard for Sabu? And then the finish, which is was probably a mistake to do a no finish on the ECW pay-per-view. Like,
I mean,
the fans,
it was the only way to get out of this.
yeah, the fans shit on it, but what an amazing spot that
It was terrifying. So they set up a table, like balanced between the ring apron and the guardrail. Ray like jumps off a chair in the ring onto the top rope, or Sabu does this, jumps from the chair to the rope and grabs Ray and DDTs him through the table.
And I mean, they spike. They go down head first through that table. It is like to put that in their highlight footage for the TV show, because that's like, oh my god, like that's a holy shit moment for real.
A bad idea.
But I mean, like it kind of looked amazing.
It did,
even though it was terrifying. Like they were both fine, so it was like, holy shit, what a fucking move.
So they call the match on that. I kind of, in my view, a mess of a match that was really, really unsafe.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't lie. Like, I loved every minute of it. Like, sometimes ECW would pull off those matches where you're like, oh my god, no human being should do this. But holy shit, it was great.
Yeah, this was one of the ultimate don't try any of this at home matches. And I want to put over Sabu's run here in ECW. This was probably the best ring work he ever did in this like 6-month period.
Absolutely. Like we'll get into why WWE ECW failed probably a little bit later.
Don't smoke crack.
Yeah, don't smoke crack, kids. Don't leave miscellaneous crack pipes around in your car.
You leave one crack pipe in the car, and everybody gets all. Yeah. All right.
But yeah, he could have been something here. This was his shot in a big promotion, and honestly, he probably could have been a mainstay for a couple more years. It's just a shame.
Yeah. So the next match, we get Edge and Mick Foley against Tommy Dreamer and Terry Funk. And this is where we get into, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but there's this thing with Mick Foley where like they let him write his own storylines. And Mick Foley is a very smart, creative guy, but I feel like he would often come up with ideas that just didn't work. And like bringing in Terry Funk when he was in his 60s, and like the Funk, just like the crowd, the crowd turned on his promos because they were just kind of incoherent because he just wasn't really with it and hadn't been on a major wrestling promotion in 10 years at this point. And I just felt like this was a very strange storyline.
It was, and you're right. Like this is. You got to remember that at the time, Mick Foley was less a crazy person and more like, oh my God, everybody loves Mick Foley. He wrote all those books that people love. This is right around the time where he writes like Tatum Brown, which is people are just like, the Hardcore Diaries or whatever it was about this, about pitching the storyline to Vince and about desperately trying to get it like pushed through, because he believed that this was the storyline to end all storylines.
I mean, Mick Foley, like his anti-hardcore run in ECW was awesome, and his promos in the lead up to this were really good because he's Mick Foley and his promos are amazing, and like his stuff about how I don't want these guys to go through what I went through, it resonates. Right. On the other hand, him and Edge teaming up like 2 months after they've had that vicious WrestleMania match is a stupid idea.
Yeah.
And like it's another thing Mick Foley does where he brings reality into his storylines, which is good, but sometimes he does it in a way that doesn't make sense. Like when him and Ric Flair had that feud that was entirely about things that no one knew about.
Yeah, the feud that was entirely about Mick Foley's crush on Melina.
Oh God!
You would only know if you had read his book. Like, what the hell are you guys talking about?
I had like forgotten about that, but there's also a weird Mick Foley thing where he's like, "Oh, me and this hot chick, we're such great friends. She's such an amazing person." Yeah,
he tried to do that like 50 times. Like it was just like, Deborah's my special friend, Stephanie McMahon's my special friend. Like, Mick,
we get it.
Yeah, relax, bro.
Yeah. So basically, the storyline is like Foley is against bringing back ECW. He teams up with Edge because they're friends in real life, even though it doesn't make sense for the storyline for them to be teaming up. And Dreamer and Funk are defending the honor of ECW. Foley comes out with a massive shiner. I assume he got that from one of Funk's punches because Funk did not look like he was pulling his punches at all during this.
I'm not sure he could. Funk looks horrible here.
Remember how when we did the show on Barely Legal, we were talking about how old Funk seemed? That was almost 10 years before this.
Yes.
He's 62 here. Like, what are they doing letting him wrestle?
And like this isn't like Ric Flair 62, where he still looks like he's athletic. Like obviously he's coming to the end of his career, but he looks like he could still get in there with the kids and go. He looks like he's 82. Like he looks dead.
God. Thankfully, this was like his last match for a major wrestling promotion. Although I think he might still be wrestling.
Probably, but like,
yeah.
Do you think that this would have worked better if that's Sandman instead of Funk?
I mean, the thing is, they were going for like Funk. Funk is Foley's mentor and his idol and his best friend.
But see, the problem with that is that Mick Foley spends his entire WWE career trying to put over Terry Funk as like one true nemesis connection with, and Funk never puts that over. I don't think Funk feels that at all.
I don't think Funk was. I'm not sure he had the mental capacity and speaking ability at this point to participate in this storyline.
Yeah, and it kind of buries Tommy Dreamer because he kind of just gets lost in this.
Yeah.
Begins. Beulah just adds herself to it?
Yeah, Beulah and Lita are in the match. So the pre-match promos I thought were really entertaining. Foley puts over the legendary owner of ECW, Stephanie McMahon, and says, "Long live the Alliance." Such a great troll. Edge gets on the mic, says, "This is like Christmas for ECW fans. Only their Santa Claus is fat, bald, Jewish, and gives out an endless supply of Percocet."
Man, what a deep shoot comment that is.
He says the fans are going to jerk off to pictures of Lita tonight. Lita gets on the mic. She calls Dreamer the innovator of silence and says that when she sat on Dreamer's face, it was more action than the fans get in an entire year. Awesome pre-match promos.
These are three amazing heels cutting just vicious promos.
Yeah, love it.
And Edge and Lita during this time are maybe my favorite heel act of all time.
So perfect. What a great dynamic. I mean, just like sleazy guy who stole the girlfriend of a beloved wrestler and like, just like the whole like this woman's hotter than any woman you'll ever be with dynamic is so great.
Yeah, and like he's so good looking and such a dick, and he's so good, and like it just pisses you off.
Edge, I loved Edge. This was his peak probably these couple years here.
Yeah, and I mean nobody really comes out of this match well. Like, kind of everybody just kind of gets destroyed.
Dies in this match.
Except Edge.
Except Edge. Yeah, Edge comes out kind of without a mark on him.
He comes out looking like $1 million. Everyone else staggers out horribly damaged, including Lita, and he's just like, doop, 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 I humped Beulah.
So, yeah, Beulah gets on the mic, challenges Lita to make it a 3-on-3 match. I have no idea why.
Like, Beulah was not a wrestler.
They're not in the match. Like, I remembered it as like they actually were part of the match, but they don't participate until the very end of it. They just stand on the apron and like look at each other.
But it's one of those things like this is what you would do if you desperately needed to protect losing team.
Did Funk use the job? Like Tommy Dreamer? Like who cares about Tommy Dreamer getting pinned? Tommy Dreamer's never won a match in his entire career.
Yeah, these are like the two most famous jobbers in ECW history. Who are you protecting? Against Edge?
I swear there was a point like a year after this where Tommy Dreamer won a match, and it was like the first time he'd won a match on WWE TV in like 6 years, 5 years.
Yeah, definitely.
So, it's just an insane match. Like, there's this massive piece of plyboard covered in barbed wire that's like the star of the match.
Oh my god! And like, it's kind of fast forward into the end, but like they have to wind up like the match ends just with Mick Foley and Terry Funk caught in this
Oh
thing
my god.
because they fall onto it together.
Funk is bleeding
And
so much.
the real deal, man. They are stuck in the
Yeah.
plyboard. They could
And
not
like
have gotten
Funk is
out.
like yelling at the guys, like, cut me out. You're gonna have to cut it. Like, yeah, because if he tries to get out of it, it's gonna cut his arms open. He's gonna bleed out.
Oh my god, it's fucking terrifying. Like it's one of those things where like it's so much worse than it even looks.
Barbed wire, fire, like man on woman violence. This is what made ECW different, and like just an absurd match.
This is another thing about selling for ECW. Like you can tell that Edge is a fan of ECW and like of Mick in general. Like he's clearly like doing a lot.
He's way too good to be in this match.
What other major, and I'm talking like top 20 ever in the company major?
Can you imagine Randy Orton
like
being in this match?
Yeah. Or like even
Randy Orton would just kind of like skulk around the outside.
Or even Cena. Like we're talking Fire gets involved in a match starring one of the biggest stars in WWE history. What the fuck is he doing there?
You imagine pitching Steve Austin on, oh yeah, you're going to get slammed onto a flaming table.
Yeah, like what the
Rock,
hell?
Oh yeah, Rock, we're just going to slam you on some barbed wire here. You're going to get, we're going to throw you into the barbed wire board.
Just for some reason during this period, Edge was just like, you know what? I'm a hardcore wrestler. Let's go.
For anything. I actually love his gear where it's like jean pants and the vest. I think it looks really cool.
Yeah, and it's genius of him to do that because he's the only one who's got any protection. Yeah.
Well, actually, everybody's wrestling in a t-shirt because it's ECW and we don't want to see them shirtless.
Yeah, nobody. Only Edge would you want to see shirtless.
Yeah. It's a ridiculous match. I loved it. I'm glad they don't do matches like this anymore.
Yeah, and this is sort of the end of Mick Foley having his way because I like this
Probably
match, but it
reason.
wasn't for success. Like this was supposed to be a semi-main event, and it just doesn't feel that way.
Weird that Mick Foley didn't wrestle the year before on the ECW. He was on commentary the year before this on the ECW show.
Yeah.
I wonder what that was.
I don't think he was physically in shape to do anything. Honestly, like he had been out of the ring since the Orton match.
Yeah, 04. So I mean, but that was only a year before that. No, didn't he do he did the feud with Flair in 05?
I thought he did it after, but maybe you're right. Maybe he did. I don't know. Like,
was that this year?
That's a very weird time.
No, I think it was the year before. I think that was 05.
Yeah, that was like around SummerSlam, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like this didn't. Well, I'd like to cover that another time, but that's one of the all-time feuds that didn't go over, right?
Yeah, exactly. But this is just a very weird time for Mick, and like, getting Terry Funk and Tommy Dreamer over as important people, and like I guess that's what this match was meant to do. But all it really winds up doing is making Edge look awesome. That's all it does.
Yeah. Yeah, Edge is the only guy who comes out of this. Like we said, he just kind of walks away totally fine. He won the match. He humped Beulah while he was pinning her.
Yeah, that's the most famous part of this match is the image of him just humping, like he spears Beulah, right?
That's what to do.
Pulls her like legs up, and he literally just fucking humps her.
Yeah, that's why Edge was a great heel. Cool down match before the main event, Masato Tanaka versus Balls Mahoney. Only notable thing here is Balls wins with just a detestable chair shot to Masato Tanaka's head.
Yeah. And like that was sort of what Masato Tanaka did, but God, I wouldn't want to know about his concussion.
Well, and so did him and Mike Awesome did, and Mike Awesome, I think was dead by the time this show happened, right?
Yeah, and it's weird that they don't do like a tribute to him if he was dead by the time.
I think they didn't want to they may not have wanted to bring attention to what Joey Styles said about him on commentary the year before.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
So before the main event, Eugene comes out.
Oh my God.
He says some stuff, thanks his uncle Eric Bischoff, and then Sandman comes out to beat him up.
Let me give some
It
credit.
takes so long for Sandman to get to the ring here, and he looked so drunk.
Yes. Let me give some credit to Eugene here for a minute. Nick Dinsmore, because like he was clearly put in an unenviable spot. Like everybody hates your fucking gimmick, you son of a bitch. Go
And
out there and make him hate
you. When
you.
Eugene first debuted, he was really over, but that was 2 years before this. By this point, it's like, why are they still using this character?
Yeah. But like he does come up with like a funny collection of lines or just like, how can I accidentally say the wrong thing about ECW?
Yeah. And Sandman beats him up with a cane, and the crowd cheers a mentally handicapped man being beaten.
Yeah, that definitely felt wrong. This is kind of what they would just have.
I enjoyed Sandman's like hardcore enforcer character. That was a good use of him.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and it was funny because there was so much worry when he went on Sci-Fi. Is like it leaked out that like Sci-Fi is going to make him have aliens and shit on the show. That only happened so Sandman could beat him up. Like it wasn't a real thing.
On the original ECW is so great. Such a great troll of everybody's concerns.
Absolutely.
I wish they'd done it more. I would have done that every week for the first like month and a half.
Like I only remember them doing it a couple of times, and then like famously the one where like Big Dick Johnson's in there and he starts jerking off the cane. While Sandman just spits beer out. That's one of the greatest GIFs in wrestling history. I suggest you look it up.
Yeah, no, I remember that. All right, so it's main event time. It's John Cena defending the WWE Championship against Rob Van Dam. So Van Dam won the Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 22. He announced in advance that he was going to cash in at One Night Stand. I remember there being kind of speculation. Would he face Cena? Would he face, maybe they put the world title on JBL and JBL would have a ton of heat and Van Dam could beat him. Or maybe do they do Triple H because Triple H would probably have been even more hated than Cena here, but they were not going to put Triple H in that position right after he had just turned face and reformed DX. So they go with Cena instead, and probably the right call.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to give something the stamp of approval, it had to be by beating Cena, who was so clearly like their guy by that point, right? He's the guy.
He's just gone over Triple H at WrestleMania.
Funny because that's when the boos had started a little bit before that, but that's when they really started. That's
Chicago
when the Smark
was
audience,
the first time they had to acknowledge it. It was so much.
Yeah, so like the Smarks had really turned on Cena, which is funny because as a fan, like being like, "Boo, fuck you, Cena, we don't want you." And this was the show that changed my mind. Like
even his biggest haters acknowledged that he did great here.
Yeah, not only does he have the best match he had in WWE to that point, I think, because this is before the Michaels matches, right?
Yeah, that was the year after this.
Yeah, so this is the best match up to this point. Not only does he put over Van Dam and like work his ass off to do it, but like his entire attitude here, like his presentation is so top notch. Like I could talk
what a great heel he could have been.
Yeah, I could talk about it all day. Like my most watched YouTube clip of all time probably is his entrance into this match.
Yeah, just
where he puts his head down and his hat's over his eyes, so his eyes are dark, and he puts the title up, and he's just like, I don't give a fuck about any of you guys.
It's just such an amazing contrast to. I mean, he still had more of the Doctor of Thugonomics at that point. He wasn't quite like Fruity Pebbles John Cena,
right?
But it's still just such a different demeanor from the moment you see him.
Yeah, all of John Cena's best ever matches, he taps into this. This, like, I don't give a fuck. I'm the greatest who ever lived.
Aren't all of John Cena's best matches where he wrestled as the heel?
Yeah. Like, that's exactly probably what it really has to be. And
this was the rest of his career was, let's put Cena against a guy that internet fans love and let him get booed, and they'll have an awesome match.
Absolutely right. And he always delivered.
Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles, that list can go on and on.
But, like, this match, I mean, just Cena in general, like, seen anything like him before. Like, you forget how early in his career this is. Like, the Triple H match was kind of
yeah,
and like that was his first WrestleMania.
He really wasn't that good a wrestler at this point.
No, and that was his first WrestleMania main event, right?
Yeah. He won the title against JBL the year before that in the sub main event.
Yeah, I mean, this was after the program with Kurt Angle and Chris Jericho, where they like bust their ass to put him over, and everybody hates it.
That was part of the problem. They were trying too hard to put him over.
Yeah. So it doesn't work. But man, this is the perfect moment to have somebody beat Cena. And he had like a long title reign before that. It had been like almost a year, right?
He had won the title at WrestleMania, and then he lost it to Edge in January at the New Year's Revolution show.
Right.
But then he won it back 3 weeks after that at the Rumble. So basically he's been champion for like 14, 15 months at this point.
Yeah. So I honestly did not believe that Rob Van Dam was going to win, but I thought they were going to screw job it. Like I thought
they were going to do basically what they did, with the twist that they actually kept the title on Van Dam afterwards.
Right. But I didn't think it was going to be this much
the big thing
in
that
favor of Van Dam.
Stands out to me is just how much of this match is Cena kicking the shit out of Van Dam.
Right.
Like 80% of the match, I'd say, is Cena on offense.
Yeah, which is funny because I guess they knew in advance that he was going to be a heel. Like, they had to, right?
Yeah.
He works like a heel finish. Like, he is 100% just putting a beating on Van Dam. He plays to the crowd, not directly, but he just keeps giving him those looks that, like, fire him up. Yeah. He's, like, pulling out offense you never see from him.
I love, they're chanting same old shit, so he does, I don't know, like a fisherman's suplex buster or something. They're like, you still suck.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can't wrestle, as he's pulling off like picture perfect suplexes and stuff like that.
So Cena kind of digs his own grave here. He has Van Dam in the STFU. Van Dam makes the ropes. He punches out the referee for kind of no reason.
Yeah, that is so unlike him too. Like that is, it's a weird moment.
It's heel John Cena. But yeah, this leads to SmackDown referee Nick Patrick running out from the back to start refereeing the match. And now you think the screw job is in. But a guy in a motorcycle helmet shows up and spears Cena. He takes off the helmet and reveals that it's Edge.
Turning himself babyface in one move.
Yeah, suddenly the crowd, literally chants, "Thank you, Edge." Van Dam hits the 5-star frog splash, and Paul Heyman runs in and counts the pin. I guess, who knocked out Nick Patrick? Was it Edge?
I think so, something like that. Or like one of the moves.
Punched him out. But anyway, a second, they do double ref bumps. Heyman counts the pin. So when this happened, I was like, okay, Heyman can't count the pin. They're going to give the title back to Cena on Raw, and Van Dam will be the ECW champion. But that's not what they did.
No. I mean, they give both titles to Van Dam, and they run with him. Not only on ECW, but on both shows.
Yeah. I mean, smart move. If you want to establish the brand as credible.
And he was so hot. Like,
really
even on Raw, like, he could have just been the Raw champion. Like, ECW completely separate from anything.
So the locker room empties. Everybody's celebrating with Van Dam. Crowd's going insane. Great moment. I think a really great show to kick off the new ECW brand. And at this point, the future looked really bright. There was tremendous optimism for what this was going to turn out to be. And then everything immediately went to shit.
Oh my God. The crack pipe. I mean, let's actually say what actually happened. I mean, Van Dam, and this was like a couple weeks after, because I think it was before the pay-per-view where he was going to defend a title against Cena and Edge, right?
He was, it was right before the 4th of July. It was like the weekend before, it was like the Friday or the Saturday before the 4th of July. And he was going to lose the title to Edge a week or two after that on on Saturday night's main event. But this still kind of botched up their plans because he was going to lose the WWE title but still be the ECW champion.
Right. But so what winds up happening is Sabu and Rob Van Dam get pulled over in a car on the way to the show. In the car, they find just a metric fuck ton of weed and a crack pipe.
Yeah, like they open the windows and smoke just like plumes out.
It's like a Snoop Dogg video come to life.
There's video of this stop online. They've got like the dashboard camera on YouTube. But I think one of the officers is like, why do you smell like weed?
I just, and like, there's this real feeling, not just from like regular WWE fans, but even from ECW fans at the time, just like, how could you blow it like this? Like, Rob Van Dam,
you're the world champion and you're doing drugs in the car while you're driving through a notorious speed trap.
Right. And I mean, this is like the highest point of RVD's career, and his career's basically, it's not over because he'll always be like somebody, but like his career as a main eventer is done.
Oh,
it's
totally
over.
blew it here. And like, yeah, understandably they lost faith in him.
Yeah. Sabu just straight up gets fired.
It confirmed everything they worried about him and like the reasons they hadn't put him on top before, that they just felt like he cared more about smoking weed than wrestling.
It's just such unfortunate timing because legitimately he had been doing this for like 20 years. Like this exact thing. And this is when he gets pulled over.
Yeah, and like it wasn't serious criminal charges. Like it was in Ohio. Marijuana is decriminalized in Ohio, even though they were driving. But even then, I think they just like paid a fine, and like there was no crack in the pipe. It was just a pipe.
It just gets, but since he's world champion, it gets leaked to TMZ like immediately, and that's the problem. It's on the news, and it's the world champion, and it looks horrible.
So they're both suspended. And this is after, like, the first couple ECW TV shows were horrible.
Yeah,
like,
they were.
They were so bad. The first one featured this, like, the main event was like a hardcore battle royal with 10 guys where, like, all the guys were out of shape except Big Show. Everybody's botching stuff. Like, Big Guido can't even get up for, like, Big Show's slam. Like, half the guys in that match got fired that night.
This is the thing. Like, if they had given it 6 months and said, like, all you guys were signing you, get in the best shape of your life, get ready for real TV, let's go. But they didn't. They do this all the time. They sign guys off the street because they need them when they need them, and they're not ready to be in this spot.
Oddly, the two guys who actually got into shape were Balls Mahoney and the Sandman.
And they wind up getting used a ton, like on Raw even.
Yeah, Vince loved Sandman apparently. And then like he quit right as they were about to give him a push.
Yeah, the most hilarious thing was like Sandman was apparently like the most professional employee that Vince had ever seen in his life.
He would just like show up and like read a book, like put on his reading glasses and read his, but it's like it just feels like he's impersonating someone else.
Oh my god.
It was like, great. Oh, this is what Vince McMahon wants in a professional wrestler, right?
And the best part of his run, like I think this is the best part of maybe anyone's run in WWE, is during the incredibly big who was Vince McMahon's illegitimate son angle. Ken Anderson, but like it wound up not being because he fucked it up. They pull in a lawyer and they start reading off like things which are supposed to disqualify people, like he has blonde hair, he doesn't have any tattoos, like stuff like that. Sandman gets disqualified on like the second one, but he just doesn't notice. So he's still in the ring until he's the last guy in the ring.
It's live TV.
So literally, like, he's standing there, and there's nobody else in the ring. And, like, everybody's looking at him like, wait a minute. Is Sandman Vince's son?
Why not? Actually, can you imagine, like, Sandman, like, now he starts, like, wearing suits and trying to be a gentleman?
I would have done anything to see that.
I think that actually would have been hilarious. That would have been way better than Hornswoggle.
I wish they had just taken a total like swerve and just been like, Vince had just seen him there and just been like, it's this guy.
Give me a huggy. So Van Dam and Sabu both get suspended. Van Dam loses the WWE title, and then he loses the ECW title to Big Show. Heyman turns heel and becomes the heel authority figure, backing Big Show as his champion. So they're down to basically Big Show and Angle. And then Angle's drug problem is just out of control. They tell him, you need to go to rehab. He says no, so they fire him. And now they've lost their top 3 guys.
And then comes the new breed.
Ooh,
They call up just like
everybody.
ECW was always meant to be like, here's the ECW originals, and then let's call up some of our OVW talent that we're not sure what to do with, give them to Paul because he can work with people, minimize their flaws, and just like find a way for them to work.
And he'd been working in OVW, so he knew all the guys.
Call up a bunch of them, and then it just becomes this ECW originals versus OVW guys thing. You guys are ready for the spotlight. Only one of them can cut a fucking promo. Let
me try to remember who's in the new breed. It's Mordecai as Kevin Thorne, our old friend. Right. Striker.
Striker.
The Pope. What was he called in WWE?
Elijah Burke.
I always liked him.
Thank God for him. He's the only one with charisma in the whole group.
Who was the fourth? Oh, God, it's Brown.
Marcus Corvon. Monty Brown.
And they couldn't decide how Marcus was spelled. Is it spelled with a C and a U, or is it with a Q?
With a Q, like Marquise Corvon. The Marquis de Corvon.
They still wanted to be like, this guy's a former NFL football player. This guy played in the Super Bowl. But they can't use his name, Monty Brown, because people might discover TNA.
That's just like one of those, like, come on, man, that's his real name.
Yeah, like, again, this guy played in the NFL for like 8 years. He was a starter in a Super Bowl. Like, that's stuff you should be playing up. Make him seem like a credible athlete.
Oh, and let me just send you to YouTube one more time. Go find his theme music. It's the worst fucking theme music I've ever heard.
Was it like some kind of funk beat?
Yeah, it's like jazzy funk.
I mean, and they were still kind of doing the alpha. Was he the alpha male, Marcus Corvon?
It was the same gimmick, man. He had the same
was he built
finish.
From the Serengeti?
No, he wasn't, which is a shame.
Yeah. But he can't really do the pounce properly without the 6-sided ring.
Yeah, there are like 3 people in wrestling history that TNA did better, and that's one of them.
Yeah. So do you want to just quickly go through some of the other lowlights of WWECW?
Oh, please, let's do.
December to Dismember, the worst pay-per-view in WWE history.
But it had Bobby Lashley on it, so was it really that bad?
Can anything with Bobby Lashley really be bad?
Exactly.
I love the story that what got Heyman fired was he kept trying to convince Vince that they should have CM Punk choke out Big Show in 2 minutes in the Elimination Chamber.
Give a fuck by that point.
Yeah. And like finally Vince had just had enough and fired him. Braden Walker.
That is number 2 on the list of things TNA did better. Fat ass Chris Harris.
Man, I only watched TNA a little bit, but I knew who America's Most Wanted was. So when they signed Chris Harris, I was like, oh, he's good, right? This is going to be good. And he shows up, and he weighs like 300 pounds.
Which is so funny, because he had been in TNA like 3 months before, and he looked fine.
Like, why did they debut him when he was in that kind of shape?
He only winds up having like 2 matches, and I distinctly remember because people in TNA made fun of him on TV for years after that. I think at one point James Storm gave somebody as a gift a Braden Walker best of WWE DVD.
Oh, somebody on YouTube did an amazing trailer for like the Braden Walker DVD that like it's got like the Hall of Fame song in the background and it's got like his 2 backstage segments. Knock knock. It's Braden Walker. And I'm gonna beat your brains in.
Yeah, what a catchphrase.
And then there's like his other pre-tape is like he walks up to Matt Hardy and introduces himself and shakes his hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Colt Cabana is Scotty Goldman.
That only lasts like a week. And like it's weird
That's
because
what I love that was like guys would just show up and you'd never hear from them again.
And then he gets another shot on SmackDown, right? Or is that before?
I don't remember.
Yeah, he was on SmackDown for like 3 weeks, and like we all hoped it would be a thing because he got like backstage comedy segments that would like pop up in the middle of other people's matches. On this fucking crew particularly like that their matches are being interrupted for stand-up comedy by Colt Cabana.
Was Ty Dillinger on ECW, or am I misremembering?
As Gavin Spears, but only for like a cup of coffee.
What a name.
Yeah.
Oh, they did not know how. They could not name people to save their lives in this era.
No.
Ricky Ortiz, the dude with the afro who waved the towel.
It's so funny because they've basically remade his exact gimmick in No Way Jose.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, the Hispanic, charismatic, athletic dude. Yeah.
Mike Adamle, ECW play-by-play man who has never watched professional wrestling before.
That shows you the disconnect of like when Paul Heyman and everybody leaves and they don't know what the hell to do with this show, that they would genuinely think like, yeah, let's throw Mike Adamle on there. The fans will love that.
He was on American Gladiators. Anybody who was on American Gladiators is automatically over.
Oh my God, yes.
Chavo Guerrero is ECW champion.
That poor Chavo. Like at various times, Chavo was very good, but like that's the lowest point in the history of this show. Is them genuinely trying to convince us that Chavo was a world champion, and they'd even put him on posters and just be like, "John Cena's the champion, Bobby Lashley's the champion."
When they would do Night of Champions,
and it was Chavo.
Yeah, that was about the time, was it? Because I think after he won the title, he was still in the Royal Rumble. So like that was the point where they were starting to stop pretending that it was a real world title.
Yeah, but I mean, after that, they would come back to it when it became kind of its own NXT style show, and a lot of people had great runs with that title. Matt Hardy, Christian, Tommy Dreamer, Mark Henry,
yeah,
Jack Swagger had a great run.
Yeah, so like now let's talk about the more positive end of this, because like this once they kind of cut out the ECW part of it and just made it like a super developmental territory, a lot of guys either got their starts there or veterans kind of refreshed themselves there.
Absolutely. Like there's a period from, I want to say it's like 2008 to 2010, where this was legit my favorite show in WWE history. Everything felt fresh. It felt like every week somebody new and interesting was debuting and they were getting a ton of time. And it didn't always work, but it just felt experimental in a way that no other WWE show ever has.
Yeah.
We're just like,
they're just trying stuff.
We got to put on an hour on Sci-Fi every week. Fuck it, let's throw it up against the wall, see what comes out. And they managed to find a lot of stars.
Evan Bourne, Sheamus, Miz, John Morrison,
Kofi
Swagger, Kofi Kingston. Yeah, like suddenly this CM Punk was the first one. Yeah, the guy who became the biggest star.
Like, it's funny to think that OVW was what came up with all the talent from like 2001, like 2005. ECW was what like the developmental that brought up all the talent from like 2007 to when NXT started. Like that's just a funny thing to think about. Yeah, and I wish. I mean, they ended up doing the NXT like game show instead. They probably should have just rebranded ECW as NXT and kept it on TV in its existing format. Absolutely. It was kind of a slap in the face to ECW fans that by like 2010, ECW was the name that they put on a fucking show that had literally nothing to do with ECW. Zero. Like the only resemblance was like Tommy Dreamer was still there. Absolutely. Ooh. All right. So kind of I think we've covered this pretty extensively at this point, but any final thoughts on this show or the WWE ECW brand? I'd say just like a fascinating misfire. And I don't know if it could have worked out, but certainly they caught a lot of bad breaks that ensured that it wouldn't. I'm not sure what they could have possibly done to make this a workable TV product. Like, you got to remember, like, you got to make it feel like ECW, but it's got to be in front of WWE fans and WWE arenas. It's got to feature some WWE talent, and you got to jumpstart all the storylines that were dead 6 years ago from scratch. How the hell you pull this off? I don't think you can jumpstart a brand from scratch like this. I just don't think you can. No. I mean, can you imagine if you tried to bring back WCW at this point? Exactly. And WCW was less a product of its era than ECW was. things where if you want to get something over, whether it's a new brand or a new wrestler, you need probably 3 to 6 months to pull it off before it's really viable. And God damn it, they just didn't have that kind of time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they could have. I don't think there was a way that this was going to succeed. And what it ended up being was pretty great. A super developmental territory. It just wasn't ECW.
Agreed. Wasn't ECW. It was still had value, but man, what a ride they put us on.
Yeah, one of the more I'd say this seriously. I think one of the more interesting things that ever happened in WWE history.
Agreed.
All right, so I think that wraps up our coverage of WWECW. Next week, we're going way back in time, and we're going south of the Mason-Dixon line for some good old professional wrestling. It's going to be the Great American Bash 1989. Hughes, what are you looking forward to for this one?
Not only have I never seen this show, I'm not sure that I've ever seen a show from this year in this company. Was absolutely never an NWA guy, never an early WCW guy. I've literally basically seen like Flair Steamboat and some Steiner matches here and there. So like a lot of this is going to be almost completely new to me. So you guys are going to have to bear with me as I mark out.
Some good old country fried wrestling. We got Ric Flair versus Terry Funk for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Sting against the Great Muta for the television championship.
Yes.
And really kind of a dream match. The two painted warriors going at it.
Is this the first one that they had?
First major one.
Nice.
Yeah. Ricky Steamboat versus Lex Luger for the U.S. title, and a classic War Games match. And a 2-ring battle royal with Sid Vicious.
Oh, is this the one where he murders people, or am I not being specific enough?
Not specific enough. It's actually Dan Spivey who almost kills Johnny Ace with a power bomb this time. Refreshingly, it's not Sid's fault.
Shame he didn't finish the job, am I
right? So that'll be next week. Thanks for listening, everybody. We hope you see you again next week.